Hey everyone, Caleb with Antique Book Collective, and today I'm getting to you guys again with the Shepherd's Rod. So the Shepherd's Rod, again, this is volume 2, published in 1932. This is a first edition, and I am basically telling you guys this whole video and walking you guys through this video on why I priced it the way I did, why I'm doing what I did on the pricing, all that sort of stuff, because I have had questions, and I'm sure I'm going to continue having questions about this book, why I priced it the way I did, and the stuff that I did like that, because it's a very interesting piece, and honestly, if you guys are antique booksellers like me, you're going to find a whole lot of very, 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 very interesting pieces as you do your business. For me, the most interesting book I've ever had, I used to think was The Time Machine, because for me, I am a science fiction nerd. I love The Time Machine, and getting a first edition of The Time Machine was so cool, so interesting, so much fun. And now I have a first edition book from a actual cult from America, and it's like, okay, even if this doesn't sell and become the most valuable book I've ever done, I think the interesting factor for it is going to be very, very high, just because it's like, it's not every day you stumble across a book from a cult. And that being said, as I said in my other videos, this book, guys, is incredibly, incredibly rare. I mean, I have not found any other copies of this book anywhere. I mean, guys, I searched and I searched and I searched, and I could not find a single copy of this hardcover. And honestly, you might be joining a cult just because you're reading the text, so don't read it, guys. Cover your eyes. But this book, guys, it's very, very interesting. The only other things that I could find about this book were PDFs that were available online, not the actual book itself. So clearly, for someone to have the PDF, they had to have had the book. But no one that I could find is actually selling the physical book itself, especially not the hardcover version, especially not a hardcover version that is this good of condition. Guys, this book, so basically I'm getting into condition stuff right now. This book, guys, is in stunning condition. So here's some book ASMR for you guys really quick. So the only issues that I could find with this book were the corners. As you guys can see, the corners are a little bit bent, so some minimal shelfware there. We have a little scrape right there, a little divot, if you will, so a little bit more shelfware. But the book itself, there's no writing in it. So a lot of these books, people would highlight, they'd underline, they'd write in it because they were part of the cult. So I'm telling myself that the place that I got this, they weren't part of the cult because there isn't writing in it. I'm telling myself that. But the actual book itself, I mean, there is zero writing. The binding is actually quite tight. Like, I don't know if they ever actually read this, which is interesting. And with that said about the inside, though, back to the outside, another issue with the book is the gilding inside of the embossed title information. That is faded, some of it's gone, so that is another issue with the book. But besides that, this book is like in fan-stinking-tastic shape. I mean, there are like no issues with it, which I thought was quite interesting for this book. So with all that gone over, though, I mean, I've talked about the rarity, I've talked about the condition, so those are the two things that are sort of important. But the next important thing to talk about when we are talking about getting the prices for books, especially rare books like this, is comps. So comps stands for like comparable items. Whenever you're selling a house, your realtor is going to pull up comps, which is other houses that have sold in the area that are close to your house. So for books, you do the same sort of thing. You look for other books that have sold like your book, like your condition, and potentially even just other books on the platform that you're selling on, because if you guys have sold your books anywhere except for just eBay, like for me, I did Amazon and eBay, and I've tried other things as well. That's why I've sold so many books. I've tried a lot of different things, and I've learned that some places command higher premiums than others. So for me, eBay, it doesn't command the highest premium all the time, but when you have really, really rare books, sometimes it commands a much higher premium. So with that said, though, I could not find any comps of this book anywhere on the internet. The closest comp I could find was someone who had a what I assume is a later edition of this book, but it was a volume 1, and I thought that was interesting. And it didn't have a cover. The cover was gone, and it was highlighted, underlined, all these sorts of things in it. So it was very, very used. It was not a pristine or almost pristine copy of the book like this one. So I was like, okay. So that guy was asking that much for that, and this was an eBay sold comp from a few months back. And that guy, I believe he had the book and then 2 other little booklets, and he got $350 is what he was asking. I don't know exactly what he ended up selling it for because of eBay. They don't tell you what the buy it now was because he settled on something else, but he was asking for $350. I don't know, again, what he sold it for, but I was like, okay, so he had potentially reprinting of the first book, plus 2 other lame ones that no one really would care about as much, because the first 2 are the really important ones for this series. The other ones that he had, I believe, were written after the guy that wrote this died. So V.T. Hutef was the original guy who started the Branch Davidian cult. He died in 1955, and the Branch Davidian, they continued making shepherd's rods after the first two were made and after the guy died. So, of course, there are quite a few out there, potentially. I wasn't able to track any down to have as my comps, but there's definitely a lot of stuff that you guys can run off of with that. So, with that said, though, this guy, he had a 1944 book that's, so his volume 1 was 1944, mine's 1932 first edition. His was not a first edition, and plus the other two booklets. Again, that was $350 that he was asking. That same guy, I thought this is interesting, but that same guy had a group of them from the 1980s, 7 tracts of them, and he was asking $95 for those. And then he had a group from 1945, 2 of them, and was asking $140 for those. So all those were not first editions. Well, actually, the tracks were first editions, I guess, and they were just little paper pamphlets that were little folded. It looked like they were even like saddle hitch binding, which is when you have like the paper and then you basically just staple them together like a magazine. So they didn't look too terribly valuable. They were interesting from the fact that it was the Branch Davidian. They were valuable because of that. They were valuable because of the history that they took part in because of American history, but they did not hold the same importance and value as an actual first edition of what started that whole cult. So honestly, guys, I have no idea whatsoever what this book is going to be worth in the end. And I know that I could have asked for like $1 million and had it sitting on eBay for 55 years until someone gave me an offer of like $6 trillion, and I'd be like, wow. But honestly, guys, I am basically pricing this. I'm doing this as a bidding auction for eBay, just for the drama of doing it for you guys on YouTube, because at the end of the day, I bought this for $5. Bidding currently is for $50, and honestly, I have no idea where it's going to end up going because this is such a rare, stinking book. No other editions of it anywhere. And yes, I know some people are going to be like, oh, well, you bought it for $5. You shouldn't be asking that much because that's price gouging. Guys, it's sort of like when you have a mechanic who is able to fix your car and he fixes it in 15 minutes, but he charges you $100. It's not because he's price gouging. It's because he knew how to fix your car because he's been doing this for so stinking long. You're not just paying for the actual service, you're paying for the expertise of it. And in addition to that, my expenses are not just $5 to buy the book. My expenses are, I had to track the book down. I had to do all these hours of research. I had to do this. There's a lot of stuff that goes into selling books themselves. Of course, buying the book and shipping the book out, that's not the highest expense that I have. The highest expense is the time that I put in. The highest expense is the expertise that I have on books in general. Like when I buy books, I'm not always able to look them up on the internet. I generally have my phone on me and I generally am able to look these things up, but I'm not always capable of doing that because where I live, we don't have cell reception everywhere. So I'm able to basically just take a look at books and I'm like, okay, I only have this much money in my wallet, so I can buy this many books at the current prices. So for me, when I was buying these, $5 a piece, that's very, very high for what I normally spend on books. What I normally spend on books is between nothing and about $2. Sometimes I go as high as like $2.29 because I do go to Airport Way, and that's where I live. Airport Way is towards the airport. That's in Portland, and they have a Goodwill outlet there, so it's not actually in Portland, like according to the zip code it is, but it's not downtown Portland. The people that are downtown Portland snobs, cough, cough, I said that out loud, I'm sorry, but those sort of people, they don't normally go to Goodwill, and the people I meet there are generally more of my kind of people, so I generally have a lot more fun chatting with those people than I would if I went all the way to the downtown Portland Goodwills, and I've been to those, don't like those, but with that said, I do spend a little bit more for books sometimes, especially when I think that I can get more money for them. But the reason why I bought this book, again, I wasn't able to look it up when I bought it. I didn't even know that the book was The Shepherd's Rod when I was buying it. Honestly, I was just basing it off of the binding. So I was looking at the binding of this book, and based on the glossiness on this leather cover, based on the little striped ribbon right here on the top. So that's what I don't remember the exact name. I want to call it the crown or something like that. But they usually put this little thing here to make the text block look a little bit prettier as it butts up against the spine. It's actually pretty easy to make those yourself if you are binding your own books or trying to rebind a book. It's not too terribly hard to make those, but what I find is when they have that sort of thing, it's a certain year when it's particularly like this little pattern of yellow, red, that generally for me tells me that it's from like the mid to maybe 1930s, so like 1930s to 1960s potentially is what I find those normally have. Like every single decade, they sort of changed how they bound books just a little bit, ever so slightly. So when I'm able to just look at books from the outside cover, and especially like from when I can get a side profile and like see the whole book, I'm generally able to look at the book and be like, okay, that's roughly this age, and I saw this one, I was like, okay, so that's about this age based on what I know. Shepherd's Rod, that seems like it'd be a Christian book title, so I was like, okay, so Christian books for me I knew would be worth a little bit more because I've sold quite a few Christian books. That's one of my focuses in my antique book business, because Christian books have done very, very well for me. I didn't know when I was buying this that it was a cult. In fact, I didn't even really pay attention to the title or who wrote it. I mean, I was just like, okay, that has a lamb on it, it has a staff, okay, that's probably Bible stuff, so let's go with that. So I bought it basically sight unseen. I didn't even go through it because I was just like, I'm just buying all the books that I can really quick that I know or at least think or hope that I can get a good return on. So I bought on that first trip several hundred books. I'm trying to remember really quick. So I probably spent like, oh man, I wish I remembered. I want to say I spent like $700. So $700. Let me just pull out the calculator so I don't mess up my math on a YouTube. So 700 divided by 5, that's 140 books. So I bought 140 books in the first group. I've made quite a few money on those sales already, and I have quite a few more to list. I'm looking at them just over there. Still have a few more stacks of those, and I went back to that sale afterwards and was able to buy some more books. They actually invited me back and gave me a better deal for buying more books, but this particular book, guys, is probably the most interesting of the whole lot that I've bought so far from that one. I mean, I'm still going through them, as I said, but there were some definitely interesting books in there. I've actually done quite a few videos on the other books that I've had through that, and I've actually sold, I want to say, at least $800 worth of books, and I've only listed maybe 5% of all the ones that I've gone through already. So the return has been very appropriate, but the amount of risk that I take does sort of balance out the increased value that I'm asking for on these books. I know this is a very complicated sort of thing that you guys might not be the most interested in, but for anyone that tries to challenge me on the prices that I charge, there is a lot of reasoning for it. There is a lot of risk that I take on my side, all that sort of stuff. So I just hope that all explained that. So with all that said and done though, guys, I'm probably going to do a couple more videos on the Shepherd's Rod because, again, it's a very interesting thing. But for now, that's it. And if you guys would like to learn more about the book or more about running your own antique book businesses, be sure to subscribe. You can do it there. I think you can do it there right now because we're not quite at the end of the video. But once you get to the end of the video, that's going to be right there. I'll go over that once I get there. But guys, I should be doing a couple more updates on the Shepherd's Rod because, as I said, I have it going for auction and 9.5 days left in it, and I have a few watchers already, not a whole lot. And I have one other auction going right now that has quite a few watchers and a couple bids. So when I run auctions, I generally have a lot of success with them. I know that I don't always get the highest dollar price that I could running an auction because a lot of people going for the auctions are going for the best price that they can. And that's one of the reasons why I went with that is I'm going to let people name their own price for it. I just had a starting bid of 50 and I already have a bid for 50. So clearly it's worth at least 50 bucks. But honestly, I like doing auction when I'm not entirely sure about the price because it lets me immediately see what the book's value is, at least on the low end. And again, when I spend like $5 on a book, I'm willing to be a little more risky with it. Yeah, $5 is more than what I normally like to spend, but at the end of the day, $5 is not a whole lot, especially when my starting ask, was 50 bucks, and I already have someone saying they want it for that much. It's like, okay, I can definitely swing that. So with that said and done though, guys, again, I'm going to probably do a lot more updates on this book. It's very interesting. A very interesting piece of American history, if nothing else. So thanks for watching. Again, I'd like to see you guys in the next video, so be sure to subscribe. That's right there now. Be sure to check out one of the other videos, and I'll see you guys in the next one.